Welcome everybody to week 9, day 2. We're going to be splitting this lecture into two halves. The first, I'm going to show you how to work a solution to a file I/O kind of problem. And the second half, I'm going to teach you guys how to do string streams. They're going to be split into different videos so that you can find them easily. Okay, so for the first assignment, I'm going to do something kind of similar to Deal or No Deal, the homework assignment that you just finished. So move main.cc, please. Thank you. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to actually show you how to take it step by step on how to solve a problem like this, where there's file operations, right? Where basically the notion, for those of you watching at home, the notion is you're playing Deal or No Deal, the TV show. There's all these cases that have money in it, and you open a box at a time, and the banker constantly offers you money equal to the average of how much money is left in the boxes. Now in the TV show, they fluctuate that amount, but we're just going to always give the average. So in order to do this, there's a couple things that need to take place. First thing I think obviously is going to be opening up the file. I'm just going to hard code the file. In the assignment, you have to prompt the user and stuff like that. I'm not doing the homework assignment for you, but this will kind of give you an idea of how it goes. So I'm just going to open up cases 3, which has like 10 cases in there or something like that. And then there's a couple different ways that you can do this. The first line of the file is how many boxes there are. And so one approach you can do is just to throw that line away. So you can do like string s, get line, or yeah, sure, why not, ends into s. And then we do absolutely nothing with it. And that will just read a line into the s, and then we just don't do anything with it and keep moving on with our lives. Make a vector of size, vector of integers, name cases of size 0. So option 1 is make a vector of size 0 and use pushback to grow the vector. Okay, so this is a very common approach that I use. Usually, well, maybe not usually, but usually you don't know how many lines are in a file. So option 1 is usually the only option. But for this assignment, you're given the number of cases on the first line. So there's actually another option you can do. Okay, so we'll do this, and then we will say while there's data left in there, cases dot push back read from the file. Okay, so this will grow the vector. For each line in the file, it's going to read a number in. It's going to add that to the vector. And then once the thing runs off the end of the file, the while loop breaks, and we're very close to having a one-line solution to reading from a file into a vector. The only trouble is, as you will see here, there's one itty-bitty little problem with this, which is the end of file. So when we do this, you can see, and if we look at the original file, public Deal or No Deal, cases 3. If you look at the original file, you see, yeah, we're getting all of the data here. 3 to 10 is the number of cases. Remember, 3 to 10, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 8, but you see there's a 0 at the end there, and that 0 is coming from the fact that we try doing read and we hit the end of file, and so it just returns a 0, and so we have one extra case. And so a simple solution to that is just to say cases dot pop back like that. And there we go. If we do this, then you'll see that our vector contains the data in the file. Easy. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right, so that's option 1. The other option to do it, so let me comment this out so I don't have two different vectors with the same name. The other option is to, I guess I'll pull this out. The other option is to use the fact we know how many cases there are, so we can put this back in. Option 2 is make cases of size whatever was read in. Okay, so in that case, probably do something like this: int size equals read. So that's going to read the first integer from the file, and that's going to be the number of cases there are. And then we, rather than making a vector of size 0, we make a vector of size like that. And so that's that will make 10, a vector of size 10. And then what we can do is then use a range-based for loop. So we can say for every case and cases, except you can't actually say case. That's actually a reserved keyword in C++. So for every box, I don't know, briefcase, for every box in cases, that box is going to be equal to read. So basically, we're going to say for every element in the vector, we're going to read from the file and put the result of that into that spot in the vector. Very easy, 2 lines of code. And this is going to now have, if I pull the print statement out here and run it, you'll see, voila, we got all of the data from the file loaded up successfully into a vector in, yeah, like 2 lines of code. So not too bad. Not too bad at all. Remember, this needs to be called by reference. If this is called by value, watch what happens if it's called by value. It's all zeros. And you'll be very frustrated and confused. Like, I'm reading it. I'm reading it right here for every box in the boxes. I'm reading it. But remember, this is a duplicate, right? When you do call by value, it is a duplicate. You're setting the duplicate and you're throwing the duplicate away. So you've done absolutely nothing. So always use call by reference if you're trying to change the vector like that. So that is that. If you're asking about the read library is something I wrote. It is not part of the standard library. I talked to the standards committee about standardizing it, and they told me that people don't care about I/O stuff, which strikes me as a bit odd, because basically every example in the world uses CN and Cout, and I think having a better alternative to CN would be useful for a lot of people, but there didn't seem to be any interest in it. So yeah, I care about I/O stuff too. And it's not just, keyboard and like console, like this 1980s looking stuff here. Like, this is reading from a file, right? And it's reading from a file in a very easy to understand fashion. And you can also make this a const, which you cannot do with CN. You cannot read into a const using CN. It's something you can't do. And so it's just better on every particular level you can think of. But there wasn't any interest in it, so whatever, they're lost. So if you're watching this at home and you don't have access to my read library, you can Google it on GitHub. So it's something like that. If you Google that, you'll find my GitHub page with the read header file on it. All right. So okay. So we've got all this done. These are on the YouTube stream, so whatever, you can find them anyway. Read that. Okay, so here we go. And you're commenting out. So we've opened the file. We've created a vector of the right size. We've loaded the thing. We are now ready to go. So I think for this assignment, we're going to need a function probably that computes the average of a vector, and there's a little bit of weird magic in it, because what we're going to do is the way that it works is that you're going to open a box, and when you open the box, you're going to pull the money out of it, and then we're going to set that box to be 0. So if you try opening it again, you get an error. Speaking of which, we should probably write a die function. Input. So if we ever try opening the same box twice, you see the value there is 0, we throw it away. But also, we should not count the opened boxes into the average. And there's a couple different ways of doing this. We just pass it in as a parameter. So let's make a function. Int vector average, taking in a const vector of ints by reference named vec, and an integer named size. Okay. And the reason why we're passing in size instead of using vector.size is because, again, the vector might have some open boxes in it, and we actually don't want to count those in our average. If we originally had 100 briefcases and we've opened 98 of them, there's 2 briefcases left. So we can't use the size of the vector, which will still be 100. We need to have a separate variable kind of counting down how many unopened variables remain. So to do this, we could either use a range-based for, or we can use accumulate to sum up all of the things in a vector. Which one would you guys like to see? Would you like to see a range-based for loop or a accumulate function? Accumulate it is. Okay, and sum equals accumulate vec.begin. Starting at the beginning of the vector, going to the end of the vector, starting with a subtotal of 0, we will add up all the elements and save it into the sum. And this is going to be in numeric. Thank you. And then we will return sum divided by size. So this is how you do an average, right? So if you're adding up 5 different elements, you divide by 5, and that's the average of the 5 elements. Technically, we could do all this on one line, huh? We could. Do you guys want it on one line, or do you like it better with 2 lines like this? We could do... do this, make it one-liner. What do you guys think? Hey, do you define size for the function? We haven't done it yet, so we're going to get to it. I'm just writing the function first for whatever reason. One-liner, two-liner. Vote now. Remember that vectors need to be passed in by const reference. I had some students asking, how do you pass a vector to a function? This is how you do it. Make sure the type of the vector is correct. But you, by default, pass a vector as const reference. That makes it reference there. That makes it const reference. Clear, make it clear with 2 lines. All right. I think Alessandro voted twice, but okay, sure. And there we go. So accumulate adds up everything into a sum, and then we divide the sum by the size, and we're good. If we want to do it with a range-based for, we could do like int sum equals 0 for every integer, and vec sum equals x, and you can compute the sum that way as well. So 2 lines of code, 1 line of code. Yeah, it's about the same amount of typing. I personally don't care. One or the other. All right. Accumulate does have some sharp edges. If you have the wrong type for the subtotal there, then it will use the wrong type for the entire addition process. It doesn't matter for integers because we normally put a 0 there, and a vector of integers is integers. But if you have like a vector of doubles, if this was a vector of doubles and you did this, it would turn all the doubles into integers because this is an integer. So if you were adding up doubles, you'd do like that, and then it would make it double addition. So accumulate does have a sharp edge to be careful of. So you may wish to just use range-based for loops for it. It's about the same amount of typing. I don't really have any preferences on it. Okay, so you want 1 line? Okay, make it 1 line. All right, so we're going to code golf this, I guess. Some student heard that I was telling people it was about 40 lines of code, so he took it as a challenge and was trying to squeeze everything in under 40 lines of code. So we'll cut this down for him. All right. So now we're going to go into the main loop down here. So what are we going to do here? While true, do an infinite loop. And what we're going to do, so when the loop ends, like they're going to be opening boxes and opening boxes. I guess we can say while size is greater than 1. Well, there's still like 2 or more boxes to go. If we ever get down to 1 box, we're done. And if they ever type in -1 as their entry, we're done. And when we're done, we just print out how much money you win. So you're going to see out you won, you win, you won, you won, vector average, cases, size, cases, size. Okay, so this is going to average up how much money is left in the cases. If there's only 1 box left, it's going to be that value. And that would be 1. And so that works whether or not you're down to the last box, or if you bail out early by typing in -1. So let's write the main loop now. Okay, so we're going to say int choice equals read please enter a box to open. So they're going to pick 0 or 3 or 5, whichever box they want to open. And if choice is equal to -1, then we're going to break, right? So if they ever type in -1, we leave early, and they get whatever is the average of whatever boxes remain. Otherwise, if choice is less than -1, or choice is greater than or equal to cases.size, then we die. Okay. So if they type in -5, or if they type in 5 million, we don't have 5 million boxes, 5 million more boxes, then we die. If they type in invalid index. Okay. So we always vet your input, right? And then the only other problem is if they open a box that's already been opened. And so if cases.at_choice is equal to 0, that means we've already opened it, and we die. Okay, so that handles all of our vetting and stuff like that. Now we get to the heart of the algorithm. So when they open a box, we're going to print how much money was in it. So cout, there were cases.at choice of dollars in that box. So that tells you how much was in the box, and then we're going to print out whatever the average remaining is. And so now that we've opened a box, and boxes remaining is going to go down by 1. And then we're going to cout there is an I will pay you vec average cases size dollars to walk away. And that's it. That's the entire assignment. So that's Deal or No Deal. 32 lines of code. That covers everything. So let's try it out. Test it, I guess. Comparison sign undefined. Okay, open box 1. There are $2 in that box. Open box 1 again. Oh, yeah. Forgot one thing, right? So after we open the box, we have to set that box to 0. So cases.at choice is equal to 0. And now we go. You made yours complicated? Yeah. New programmers typically, we open it up again, bad input. So new programmers typically make solutions that are far, far more long and complex than they need to be. It's one of the signs of experience that you can just kind of distill things down to, the essence of it. I give up because you're not good. You shouldn't give up. You should talk to Minkrelli and get help. And the main thing is there's usually some step where you get stuck. Like I don't know how to open a file, or I don't know how to average all the elements in a vector, or I don't know how to handle opening a box and deleting it. Because if I delete it, then all the indices are wrong. So what I'm doing here is I'm just setting the value to 0 to indicate the box has been opened, and then I'm decrementing a count that keeps track of how many boxes remain. So there's an infinite number of strategies you could take. Computer science is all about problem solving, really. And, it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and there you got $3. That's Deal or No Deal. All right. Any questions about this? 33 lines of code. We probably cut it down some more. Get rid of that comment. There you go. 1 line of code. What do you think? Readable? I think it's very readable. Job security code right here. Nobody can fire you when you have code like this. Remember, white space doesn't matter. We can actually pull a lot of spaces out of this thing. Like we could come in here and I don't know, do something horrible. Delete all these spaces. Now, if you do have badly formatted code like that, one thing you can do is call the Reformat Command. It's a shell script I wrote. It's not part of standard C++. But if you do that, it will reformat your code to look nice. And so that's a shell script I wrote. And what it is doing is calling a program called astyle. And astyle is a code reformatting tool. It's really cool. And you can pass it different options. I'm saying start with Google's style guide. And then I want to have spaces around operators like pluses. I don't want to have spaces around parentheses, things like that. So you can pass in all sorts of options for how you want your code formatted. And it will format it with tabs instead of spaces, things like that. So it's pretty cool. The backticks, by the way, there's a program in Unix called which, and it tells you where a command is. And so what I'm doing here is I'm saying open up backtick which reformat. So what happens when you have a backtick is it actually runs a command, and the output of that command, which is this string here, gets substituted in on the command line where those backticks were. So this is as if I had typed vim user bin reformat like that. So the backticks are actually executing a program, and the output of that program becomes what you type on the command line in Unix, which is one of the many, many reasons why Unix is amazing. And all of you need to know Unix. I still get questions to this day about like, how do I copy a file? How do I move a file? How do I rename a file? Things like that. Every time you log in, it gives you a link where you should read, if you have never read it, how to use Unix. It takes you an hour or two, and it will make your life much, much better. There's also the Sobel book. This is what I used when I was in college. And honestly, like the basics of Unix are still the same today. So you can probably buy it for about $5. The Sobel Practical Guide to the Unix System, you can see it was written in like the 80s with that color scheme. Yes, girl?
I'm walking home from school on Friday, right?
Yes. Okay. So Sobel, you can get it used for like nothing. I got it used back in the 90s, and it is still perfectly fine for the basics of Unix today. Highly recommend that you guys all learn Unix. It is amazing, and it will make your life far, far more productive than people who like wasting their time doing pointless stuff. So, when it's TA for lives 40 class, there's a kid who made all those variables names have a theme. If Pikachu plus char divided by squirrel equals EV. It was a nightmare, but I just started calling it job security. That is too funny. What's it called? It is called A Practical Guide to the Unix System. A Practical Unix System by Sobel. And there's plenty of other guides as well. The link that shows up when you connect is perfectly good. It's a great introduction to Unix. That's the one I used. And what I would do to learn Unix, I would just keep this next to my computer. And every day I would just go like this. Whoop, and just open it to a random page. I'm like, oh, ls. That's a useful command, right? And so it's got like 6 pages on the ls command. And so it's got examples of like how to use ls, the different command line parameters that it takes, all sorts of different cool options that like just people don't know about ls. So for example, if you wanted to show file permissions, you could do like an ls-a, ls-al, and then that will show you file permissions, and A shows you the invisible commands as well. ls-l by itself is permissions over here, who the owner is, who the group is, last time the file was modified, things like that. And then ls-al shows you all the files, including invisible files and things like that. So there's a lot of options. All these colors you see on ls, that's not by default. It's because I set the color parameter, right? And the fact that it's drawing these like hyphens and things and stars, that's not by default. By default, ls looks like this. This is much nicer looking. Okay. And all that's in the Sobel book and other resources online. Okay. So that is a worked solution on how you can read from files and put them into vectors and then do stuff with it. And that's going to serve you well on your next homework assignment, which we will talk about in the next video. So let me stop this one and I will start up another video.